Welcome to the Behind Closed Doors channel. Wishing you a peaceful day. Today, I'd like to share the following story with you. I hope you enjoy listening to my story. Now, please.
The Price of Perfection. Chapter 1. Rain fell on the afternoon that should have been the proudest day of Min's life. The drops did not pour down in torrents. They drizzled, persistent and nagging, like a sorrow that refused to be shaken loose. Each rivulet traced a crooked path down the hospital window, distorted like the face of the man standing motionless behind it. Mr. Hung, a father who had spent his entire life convinced he was doing the right thing. On the hospital bed, Min lay still, frightfully still. He was not dead, but he was no longer the boy he used to be. The doctor had spoken clearly, in an even, detached tone, the voice of a man who had delivered these words far too many times. He is suffering from severe psychological collapse with signs of anxiety disorder and prolonged depression. Without proper treatment, there is a real possibility he may never fully recover. Never fully recover. 4 words that drove straight into Mr. Hung's chest, yet he remained upright, hands clasped behind his back, as though held in place by a habit too deeply ingrained to abandon. Never show weakness. He had taught Min the same. Always be strong. Always excel. Always stand at the top. No exceptions. Min was born into a family where everything had a standard. Grades had to place him first in class. Awards had to be first place. Friends had to be worthy ones. And emotions were unnecessary. From a very young age, Min understood that his parents' love was not something given freely. It was conditional. And the condition bore a single name: achievement. The day Min received his first 9 out of 10 on a math test, he ran home with bright eyes, small hands clutching the paper as though it were a treasure. "Mom, I got a 9!" His mother, Lan, barely glanced over, brow faintly creased. "Why wasn't it a 10? Just one offhand remark, but it was enough to extinguish the light in a child's eyes. From that day on, Min stopped showing his scores. He simply strove in silence, perfected himself in silence, like a machine that had been programmed. And Mr. Hung, the father Min feared far more than he loved, repeated one phrase like a mantra: "My son is not allowed to fall behind anyone. Not allowed. Not try your best, but not allowed." A small difference in phrasing, but an invisible wire that tightened around Min's throat for years. Min grew up in tutoring sessions that stretched into the night, in an unbroken chain of examinations, in the weight of comparative glances and praise that sounded more like commands than recognition. "You did well, but it's still not enough. You can do better. Don't disappoint us." Those 3 sentences became the familiar rhythm pulsing inside Min's head. He was genuinely talented. No one could deny that. Top of his school, Provincial Academic Excellence Award, selected to compete nationally. But no one knew that each time Min stood at the podium to receive a prize, he felt no pride. He only felt relief. Relief that he had not been scolded. That was not happiness. It was temporary reprieve. Chapter 2. When Min was 17, he met Lin, a girl who was the complete opposite of the world he inhabited. Lin was not an outstanding student. She was frequently reprimanded by teachers for daydreaming in class. But Lin laughed, a great deal, and in a way Min had never witnessed before. A laugh that was free, unburdened by any standard whatsoever. "Do you ever get tired?" she asked him once, as the two of them sat on the school rooftop, the wind ruffling the pages of their notebooks. "Tired of what?" he asked, as though the question made no sense. "Tired of always having to be brilliant." Min went quiet. He had never thought about it, or perhaps he had, but had never dared give it a name. "What happens if I'm not?" he asked, voice low. Lin shrugged and smiled. "Then you just be ordinary." A simple answer, but it made something inside Min tremble. Ordinary. A concept so foreign to him that he had never once permitted himself to imagine it. Their feelings for each other grew quietly, like a secret Min kept from the entire world, and especially from his father. To Mr. Hung, adolescent love was an indulgence, a waste. "That's something for kids who have no future," he had said it once, matter-of-factly, and Min had believed him, until he met Lin. But every secret eventually surfaces. One evening, Min came home to find his father already seated in the living room. On the table lay Min's phone, screen still lit, displaying a message. "Let's skip one class tomorrow. I want to take you somewhere beautiful. Lin." The air in the room turned thick. "Explain yourself." Mr. Hung's voice was cold as steel. Min stood frozen, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might crack. "She's just a friend. Silence!" The shout cut through every defense Min had. "Do you have any idea what you're doing? This is the most important year of your life. Do you think this nonsense is worth more than your future?" "She's not nonsense." Crack. The slap came fast and hard before Min could react. It was the first time Mr. Hung had ever struck him. And it was the first time that, in Min's eyes, his father ceased to be an untouchable monument and became instead a stranger. From that day on, Min no longer saw Lin, not because he wanted it that way, but because he had no choice. His phone was confiscated, his schedule packed without breathing room. Every path that led to Lin was severed, completely and deliberately. What Mr. Hung did not realize was that he had not merely cut off a relationship. He had severed the only thing that made Min feel alive. The national examinations drew near. Min studied as though possessed. No longer was it trying, it was running. Running from the hollowness that grew larger inside him with each passing day. Running from the ache of missing Lin. Running from himself. He slept less, ate less. His smile disappeared. But his scores remained high, always high, impeccably so, until the day the results were announced. Min earned second place at the national level, an achievement that anyone would admire. But when he stepped through the front door, the first thing he encountered was his father's expression. Not pride, disappointment. Why wasn't it first place? Just one question. But this time, Min did not stay silent. "I gave everything I had." "It wasn't enough." "Then when will it ever be enough?" Min burst out, his voice breaking apart. The air seemed to shatter. It was the first time Min had ever defied his father, and it was the last. That night, Min disappeared. No one knew where he had gone, until a phone rang at 2 in the morning, a call from the hospital. Chapter 3. And now Mr. Hung stood before his son's hospital bed, gazing at the gaunt body, the closed eyes, the medical devices tethering a fragile thread of life. For the first time, he did not know what to do. There was no problem to solve, no goal to reach, no standard to cling to, only a bare, unadorned truth. He had conquered the world, but he had lost his own son. Outside, the rain continued to fall, and somewhere deep in the recesses of memory, he suddenly recalled a question Min had asked when he was small. "Dad, if I'm not smart, will you still love me?" He had not answered then, and perhaps it was that silence that had quietly destroyed his son, one piece at a time. The hospital room held its cold, antiseptic scent, the kind that, once breathed in, imprints itself permanently as a reminder of the thin boundary between life and loss. Mr. Hung stood there for a long time, so long that even he lost any sense of time passing, because all that remained in his mind was a tangle of overlapping memories, words that had once seemed harmless but now rang out like repeated blows, striking again and again in the silence of his thoughts. Min still did not open his eyes. His hands lay motionless on the white blanket, thin enough that every knuckle showed. Mr. Hung realized with a quiet horror that he could not remember the last time he had held his son's hand, could not recall what warmth it had once carried, because throughout all the years gone by, what he had been holding was not his son's hand at all, but report cards, certificates of merit, strings of numbers that had no feeling, yet which he had treated as the sole measure of worth. "You should talk to him more," the doctor said from behind him, voice gentle but clear. "Cases like this, medication alone is never enough." Mr. Hung did not turn around. He simply gave a small nod, a reflex. Talk. He had never been good at that. His entire life had been built on directives, on setting targets, on judging right from wrong by outcomes. Listening, truly listening, had always seemed to him a superfluous thing. But standing now before his motionless son, he understood at last that he had never genuinely listened to what Min was saying, had never grasped what was unfolding inside the boy, and what was worse, he had never once tried. 3 days later, Min woke. There was no miraculous moment, no tearful, "Dad," whispered through cracked lips, no reunion embrace like the ones people tell stories about. Only his eyes, opening slowly, staring up at the ceiling with a blankness that seemed to have forgotten the world entirely. Mr. Hung stood beside the bed, heart hammering, but when Min turned his head and looked over, his gaze passed through his father, as it might pass through a stranger. No anger, no resentment, only nothing. And it was that emptiness that frightened Mr. Hung more than any accusation could have. "Min," he called softly, his voice roughened. No response. "Dad is here." Still nothing. Min turned away and closed his eyes. Such a small gesture, but it landed like a door slammed shut in his father's face. The days that followed passed in heavy silence. Min spoke almost nothing. He did not resist. He made no demands. He cared about nothing. He ate when food was placed before him, took his medication when reminded, and lay still for hours at a time, looking out at a gray sky that stretched endlessly like a drawn curtain. The doctors called it emotional withdrawal, but to Mr. Hung, it felt as though his son were vanishing before his eyes, slowly and without ceremony. One afternoon, as he sat alone in the hospital corridor, Mrs. Lon came and sat beside him, her face worn, her eyes swollen from sleepless nights. "Have you spoken to him?" he asked. She shook her head. "He doesn't want to see me." The answer made the air heavier still. They sat side by side, yet the distance between them had never felt so vast. "Have you ever thought," Mrs. Lon began, voice trembling slightly, "that we were wrong?" Mr. Hung did not answer immediately. Wrong? His entire life, he had believed he was doing what was right. He had grown up in poverty, had clawed his way upward, fought for every inch of the position he now held, and he believed with full conviction that only discipline, pressure, and the relentless pursuit of excellence could carry a person toward success. He had not wanted his son to suffer the way he had. He had wanted Min to have everything, and to have everything, Min had to pay a price. That was the logic he had always trusted. But now, "I don't know," he said at last, his voice dropping low. It was the first time in years he had admitted his own helplessness.
Chapter 4. 1 week later, someone appeared. Lynn. She stood outside the door of the hospital room, hands gripping the strap of her bag, eyes uncertain, as though a single step forward might be enough to bring her entire world crashing down. It was Mrs. Lon who opened the door. The two looked at each other for a brief moment, long enough to confirm what both already knew. "You are?" Mrs. Lon asked, though the answer had already formed. "I'm Min's friend." Simple words, but Lynn's voice wavered. Mrs. Lon was quiet for a moment, then gave a small nod and stepped aside. "Come in." When Lynn entered the room, Min was still lying with his face turned toward the window. "Min?" she called, barely above a whisper. No reaction. She moved closer, step by careful step, as though afraid that even a sudden movement might shatter the moment. "It's me. It's Lynn." A long silence stretched between them. Then, almost imperceptibly, Min's hand tightened. Lynn saw it, and her tears fell. "How did you end up like this?" Her voice broke, but she held it soft, as one speaks to someone who is sleeping. "Do you know, I looked for you everywhere. Every day I stood at the school gate, hoping you would appear. But you never came." Min still did not turn around, but this time his shoulders gave the faintest tremor. "Are you angry with me?" Lynn asked, her voice growing smaller. "Or have you forgotten me already?" That question pierced straight through the fragile wall Min had been holding in place. And then, a single tear slid silently from the corner of his eye. It was the first time Min had cried since waking. Not sobbing, not heaving, only tears, but enough to change the quality of everything in the room. Lynn took his hand and held it. "I'm here. This time, I'm not going anywhere." Outside the door, Mr. Hung watched through the narrow gap, and for the first time he understood something he had never grasped before. His son did not need titles, did not need trophies, did not need to be the best at anything. What Min needed was simply someone who would stay in the moments when he was at his most fragile. Something so simple that it had never once occurred to him. But the truth had not yet finished revealing itself. 3 days later, as Min had begun responding more, the doctor requested a private meeting with the family. "We have conducted a more thorough psychological assessment," the doctor said, his tone more grave than before. "There is something we need to disclose." Mr. Hung and Mrs. Lon exchanged a glance. A dark premonition rose between them. Min is not suffering from depression caused solely by academic pressure. He shows signs of prolonged post-traumatic stress. "Trauma?" Mrs. Lon repeated, her voice unsteady. "That is correct. And what is significant is that this trauma did not begin recently. We believe it has been present for a very long time." The air seems to freeze. "What do you mean?" Mr. Hung asked, his voice hollow. The doctor looked at him directly. "He has been living under sustained pressure and fear for an extended period. Not merely high expectations, but a deep fear of rejection, of causing disappointment. That kind of fear typically originates in the family environment." The words were not loud, but they were enough to break everything open. That night, Mr. Hung did not go home.
He sat alone in his car, parked in the hospital lot, staring into the empty dark. And for the first time in his life, he allowed himself to remember. He remembered Min's trembling hands as he held out a report card. He remembered the look of terror on his son's face whenever he made a mistake. He remembered a question asked long ago. "If I'm not smart, will you still love me?" And at last, he understood. It was not Min who was weak. It was he who had taught his son to be afraid. The final revelation came on a morning that seemed, at first glance, entirely ordinary. Lynn brought Min something, a notebook. "Do you remember this?" Min looked at it, something shifting in his eyes. It was his old journal. "Before everything happened, you gave it to me to keep. You said, if one day you disappeared, I should read it." The room went still. Lynn opened to the first page. Her voice trembled as she read, "If someone is reading this, then I probably didn't have the courage to go on. Not because I was weak, but because I had been trying for too long.
All I ever wanted was to hear just once that I didn't need to be perfect. Just once would have been enough." Lin paused. Tears fell. Mr. Hung stood in the doorway, struck silent. And this time, he could not remain where he was. He stepped into the room, each step heavy, as though walking through the weight of his own failures. He knelt beside the bed, a man who had never bowed before anyone in all his life. "Min," his voice broke. "You don't have to be perfect anymore. I only need you to stay. Dad is sorry." For the first time, and also the most overdue. Min looked at him. For a long time, his eyes were no longer empty as before, but they had not yet arrived at forgiveness, only something very thin and fragile, somewhere between ruin and beginning again. Outside, the rain had stopped. The first threads of sunlight slipped through the window glass and fell across the white room, where a family stood before its only remaining chance, not to be perfect, but to learn at last how to love one another properly. This time, the price that had been paid was far too steep, but at least they still had the chance.
Chapter 5.
The early morning light was not warm enough to fully dispel the chill of the hospital room, but it created something that had not existed before. A thin, quiet strip of brightness lying between the cracks of a family that had just touched the deepest floor of itself. Min said nothing after his father's apology, nor did he turn away. He simply looked. A prolonged look. Not quite forgiveness, not quite refusal. More like an examination. Like someone asking himself whether what he had just heard was real, or merely a hallucination his mind had conjured to save itself. Because for so long, he had been conditioned not to trust gentleness. In the days that followed, change came so slowly, it was almost imperceptible. Mr. Hung still arrived at the hospital every day, but he no longer stood rigid and silent in the corner of the room. He learned to sit, learned not to speak, learned to wait. Small things, these, but for a man like him, they were harder lessons than any business decision or negotiation he had ever faced. There were afternoons when he simply sat with a book he wasn't reading, holding it open without taking in a single word, just so that Min would know he was there, not to supervise, but to be present. And Min began to change. Very slightly, very slowly. He began to eat a little more, to sleep a little more deeply. And sometimes when Lin came, he would offer a short reply, hold a gaze for a beat longer, or give her hand the faintest squeeze, as though relearning how to be connected to the world he had once tried to leave. But the deepest wounds never disappear simply because of an apology. They remain, smoldering quietly, waiting for something strong enough to disturb them again. That something came on a rainy afternoon, a rain that looked exactly like the one on the day Min was admitted. He was sitting up in bed, looking out the window, when he suddenly spoke, the first words he had directed at Mr. Hung of his own accord since waking. "Dad, do you remember the time I got a 9 on a math test?" His voice was calm, but the question landed on Mr. Hung's chest like a stone. "Yes," he answered slowly. Min gave a faint smile, one without warmth. "That day, I stood outside the door for a long time." Mr. Hung said nothing. "I heard you telling Mom that I wasn't good enough." The air stiffened. "I thought, if I wasn't good enough, then I wasn't worth loving." Each word Min spoke was quiet, but it carried a weight that made the air difficult to breathe. And from that day on, I started working harder. Not because I loved studying, not because I wanted to be exceptional, but because I was afraid. He paused. His eyes moved from the window and settled directly on Mr. Hung. Afraid that one day, you and Mom wouldn't need me anymore. No tears, no theatrical collapse. Only the truth, stripped bare, impossible to refute, laid between two people in a quiet room. And this time,
Mr. Hung could not look away. He did not defend himself, did not explain, did not reach for reason to reframe what had been said. He simply sat and let each of Min's words absorb into him, the way rain soaks into ground that has been dry for too long. "Dad was wrong," he said very softly. Not a grand apology, just an admission. But this time, it no longer felt too late. 1 week later, the doctor recommended that Min begin intensive psychological therapy. At first, Min refused. "I don't need it." His voice still carried the old defensiveness. But it was Lin who persuaded him. "Not because you're weak, but because you deserve to be okay." Those words held Min in silence for a long moment, and finally he nodded. The first session was unremarkable. Min said almost nothing. The therapist did not push. She only asked simple questions, opening doors that Min could choose to walk through or not. But by the third session, something shifted. "Have you ever thought about disappearing?" the therapist asked. Min was quiet. Then he nodded. "Often." "Why?" He looked down at his hands. "Because I was exhausted." "Exhausted from trying?" He shook his head. "Exhausted because no matter how hard I tried, I never felt like I was enough." A silence stretched between them. "And I thought, if I disappeared, at least I wouldn't be disappointing anyone anymore." Outside the therapy room, Mr. Hung sat waiting. He could not hear the whole conversation, but the fragments of words, the long silences behind that closed door, were enough for him to understand something he had never let himself fully see. His son had been carrying this weight for years, alone. And he, the man who should have been his son's protection, had helped place it there. Time passed. Not quickly, not easily, but with progress. Min began to write again. Not exercises, not formulas, but feelings. New journal pages, no longer words of despair, but sentences still shaky, still finding their footing, and yet honest. "Today I spoke more with the doctor. I'm still afraid, but I no longer want to disappear. I think maybe I can try staying." One afternoon, Lin took Min outside for the first time in many weeks. They sat on a bench in a park. A gentle wind, a clear sky, an ordinary day, so ordinary it felt almost strange to both of them. "Do you remember?" Lin asked. "This place is where I was going to take you." Min looked around, then gave a quiet nod. "Yeah, it's beautiful," Lin smiled. "See, you didn't even need to skip class to get here." Min smiled too, this time a real smile. Not strained, not guarded, just a small, unassuming moment, proof enough that he could still feel joy. That evening, Min came home. The familiar house, but the feeling was different. It was no longer a place filled with pressure. It was a place that was trying, quietly and imperfectly, to become a home. Mr. Hung stood at the door. No questions, no inspection, just, "You're back." Min nodded. A beat of silence. Then he said, "Dad, I'm not sure I'll ever be as good as I was before." Once, that sentence would have been a catastrophe. But now, Mr. Hung only smiled, very gently. "That's all right. All I need is for you to be okay." That night, for the first time in a very long time, Min slept without dreams. No examinations, no disappointed faces, no sense of being chased by a version of himself he could never become. Only sleep, still and peaceful. The story does not end with a miracle. Min did not return to being the most brilliant student. He still had bad days, still had moments when he wanted to give up. But now, he was no longer alone. And more than that, he no longer had to become someone else in order to be loved. Many years later, on a quiet afternoon, Min sat and wrote, not out of pressure, not out of expectation, but because he wanted to. On the page he wrote, "There are wounds that cannot be erased, but they can be healed. Not through perfection, but through being loved, even when you are not. And this time, when he closed the notebook, Min no longer felt like he was running from anything. He was simply living. Thank you for watching the video. Please subscribe to the channel, like, comments, and share. See you again!